and welcome back to another video. It is a beautiful May morning in upstate New York, and we are trackside on the CSX Selkirk Subdivision as local freight train L020 makes its way east past Game Farm Road in Delmar. Game Farm Road is less than a mile away from the western throat of CSX's massive Selkirk classification yard. The hump yard is CSX's hub for its northeastern region and is far and away the largest rail yard in the Northeast. All CSX carload traffic heading east to New England or south to New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia gets sorted in this yard. It additionally serves as a crew change point for long-distance intermodal and unit trains, making it a vital location on CSX's system and to the stability of the important Northeastern economy. Today, we will take a look at CSX's Selkirk terminal and the rail lines that flow into it to give you an idea of how rail operations in the area work. Fresh out of the yard now is intermodal train CSX I-159. This train underwent a quick crew change to swap the River Line crew from New Jersey for a Chicago Line crew to take it over the Selkirk and Mohawk subdivisions to its destination of Syracuse, New York. A big train today, I-159 stayed on one of two main tracks that traverse Selkirk Yard for run-through trains, allowing it to remain at higher speeds, steering clear of the yard tracks and minimizing the time these containers spent in the yard this morning. A few years ago, Selkirk went through an expansive redevelopment program to separate run-through tracks from the yard itself. Previously, trains like this 2-mile-long I-159 would have had to run at 10 miles per hour through the yard, which, as you can imagine, clogged up the entire railroad. With dozens of trains entering Selkirk every day from all directions, efficiency improvements like this demonstrate the railroad's continued investment in keeping this world-class facility operating smoothly. Next up, we headed to the west end of Selkirk Yard, located in Fierrabush, New York, at Control Point FB. Control points around Selkirk are named using abbreviations for the surrounding area. An Autorack train is preparing to depart Selkirk to the west at FB as a manifest train arrives to drop its cars in the yard. This is train M406, arriving after a circuitous journey from Virginia due to the CSX Howard Street Tunnel in Baltimore being closed, temporarily rerouting trains. Selkirk was initially built in 1924 by the New York Central Railroad and was rebuilt in 1968 to its current form, consisting of a 70-track classification hump yard capable of sorting 3,200 cars per day. Built along a freight branch adjacent to the NYC's main water level route, the yard transferred ownership from Penn Central to Conrail and finally to CSX, who operates it today. Trains like M406 arriving from the west will be broken apart, cars sorted and rebuilt into trains heading all over the Northeast, from as close by as Albany to as far away as Bangor, Maine. The crossing here at CPFB is called Stewart's, named for the popular local gas station chain, one of which is located at the top of this road. FB is where signal territory begins at the west end of the yard and is one of 2 points that the yard tracks converge with the main line, the second being Unionville, just another half mile or so ahead. With the goal of getting some trains on the line heading west out of Selkirk in the morning, we left the yard for now, heading towards Schenectady. On our way west, we passed through the town of Voorheesville, where the CSX main has recently been reconnected with the rebuilt D&H Albany main, now owned by Norfolk Southern. NS plans to start running intermodal trains over the CSX to Massachusetts in the near future via this old line, and I will be covering that in much more detail once the service begins. For now, though, we will head to one of my favorite spots on the main line west of Selkirk, Guilderland Center, located at milepost 26 on the Selkirk branch. 2 trains have just departed Selkirk, and in a few minutes they come into view side by side racing for Syracuse. The train on the right, I-019, has CSX's Atlantic Coastline Heritage engine trailing. Both originating in Worcester, the two trains have taken the former Boston and Albany main line into Selkirk, with the M265 departing hours before the I-019 and having picked up autoracks in both East Brookfield, Massachusetts and Selkirk. The high-priority 019 left Worcester only a few hours ago with a straight-shot crew to Syracuse. This is one of a few trains that completely bypasses Selkirk with no crew swap.
I-003, 327-300, 26.0, check.
Right behind 019 is its sister train from New Jersey, I-003, with priority stacks for Chicago. In Syracuse, 019's consist will be added on to the I-003 for the remainder of the trip to the Midwest. Traffic is all westbound this morning, and there's a lot of it. Coming into view before I-003 clears is Manifest Train M363, fresh out of Selkirk with a consist of cars from all over the Northeast, assembled in the classification yard and bound for Indiana. Avon is another one of CSX's major classification yards like Selkirk, located outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. M363 will drop off traffic out of the Northeast at yards along the way to Avon, and the remaining traffic will be resorted at the Avon hump yard just like it was here in Selkirk. One final westbound was in this parade, LO20 coming back to Schenectady after swapping out cars in Selkirk. As traffic died down for a bit, we drive back through Selkirk and get a look at the hump before arriving at the east end of the yard at a junction called CPSK. SK is where the River Subdivision from New Jersey, the Castleton Subdivision from New England and New York City, and the Port Subdivision from Albany all converge to enter Selkirk Yard. One of the most important railroad junctions in the Northeast, CPSK is always bustling with action as trains enter and depart the Selkirk terminal. The Route 9W overpass at SK is a great place to view the action, of which there was a lot right away, with 2 trains coming into Selkirk off of the Castleton side. M437 was going into the yard first with a large train of freight from eastern Massachusetts. M437's train comes from Framingham, Massachusetts, and is forwarded to Worcester by local crew L002. Framingham Yard is a collection point for cars from across CSX's network of eastern Massachusetts branch lines, which is where most of this traffic originated. To get to Selkirk, this train passed through Springfield and crossed the Berkshire Mountains on CSX's former Boston and Albany main line, which runs as the Castleton Subdivision for the last few miles into Selkirk Yard. With M437 out of the way, LO22, a local train hauling grain from Hudson, New York, pulls into Selkirk behind two SD40-2s. The 022 turned onto the Castleton subdivision just a few miles away at CPSM, coming off of the CSX Subdivision, which connects with Amtrak's Hudson Line to New York City. It is relatively easy to move between each end of Selkirk, and between both sides there's generally something always moving. So, as action temporarily died down at SK, we moved back to the west side of the yard for M383 departing for Montreal with 4 CSX EMDs leading the way. The mileage here is measured from the junction of the CSX Subdivision with the Hudson Line, which was the main line of New York Central's water level route. It counts up over the CSX, Castleton, and Selkirk subdivisions for 42 miles before it rejoins the main water level route in Amsterdam. We now headed back to the east side of Selkirk for a parade of trains on the river line. First up was M409, which we caught 2 miles south of CPSK in Ravenna, with a CM44 rebuilt up front and a GEVO shoving on the rear. After 409, we moved back up to CPSK, this time at ground level with the junction. M404 is the next train to pass through, entering Selkirk with an SD70 Mac up front. M404 has accumulated over 2 miles of traffic today from the Philadelphia and New Jersey areas. All of it will be sorted in Selkirk's hump yard and reassigned to other trains. The action stays hot, with I-104 now coming out of a crew change in Selkirk and heading south on the river line for New Jersey and eventually Baltimore, Maryland. Of the three lines that branch off at CPSK, the River Line is the busiest, seeing between 20 and 25 trains a day. This is followed by the Castleton Subdivision with between 16 and 18 trains every day heading for New England or New York City. And finally, the Port Subdivision to Albany is the least frequent of the three lines, seeing 2 turn jobs daily and an occasional unit train for the port. In just a few more minutes, another intermodal train is traversing the rails of CPSK. This time, it's northbound train I-157 from Baltimore heading for a crew change and Bedford Park, Illinois. Traffic from Baltimore would normally be routed over the former B&O through Pennsylvania to Ohio and west to Chicago. However, the Howard Street Tunnel in downtown Baltimore is currently closed for rebuilding to accommodate double stacks. As a result, the traffic has been rerouted through Selkirk and upstate New York to reach Ohio and Chicago. The next train to arrive would check off the final line we needed to cover today. It was yard job Y278 heading for the Port of Albany with a loaded ethanol train that was dropped off in Selkirk the day prior. 2 old Dash 8s in captive terminal service are the power for this short run to the port this evening, as the train crawls through CPSK and takes the hard turn north towards the state capital. As 278 passes by, another northbound off the river line shows up, this time Autorac train M217 with 4 units, including 2 old Dash 9s up front. Not every day now that you get to see 2 trains meeting with Dash 8s and Dash 9s in the consist. The Port of Albany is also where CSX connects to CPKC's Kenwood Yard. Normally, Y278 would have a mixed manifest consist of port traffic as well as interchange traffic for the CPKC. However, when a unit train like these ethanol loads for Albany has arrived, Y278 will instead be used to take the mile-long consist, the final stretch, to the port. In addition to ethanol, the port also receives loaded grain trains. CPKC also runs a turn job between its Kenwood Yard and Selkirk, complementing the Y278 under normal operations. We relocate around the corner on the port sub to catch the end of the train in a different location. The fixed approach signal here is to let train crews know that they are approaching signaled territory ahead at CPSK. For us, this is where we will end our tour of the Selkirk area. I hope you enjoyed learning about this important logistical hub and getting a taste of the rail action it has to offer. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.